Donald Trump is apparently facing 7 different counts, a variety of different charges with a variety of different consequences and a variety of different levels of how difficult it'll be to prove them. But we want you to be prepared for what's gonna be happening starting next week, and which, by the way, might take a couple of years to finalize, and there are consequences of that, which we'll discuss. So here are the charges. Unauthorized retention of national security documents. Basically, you're not allowed to retain national security documents without authorization, and to fail to deliver them to a government official entitled to take custody of them, that is a crime. Each such charged document would be a separate offense, so it's possible that prosecutors have brought as many as 5 counts of this offense by citing 5 different records. A conviction would be theoretically subject to 10 years in prison for each count. Basically, here, what they seem to be focusing on, obviously, he had way more documents than just these, but they're not generally focusing most of these charges on the fact that he had classified documents. They're using the Espionage Act, which, as we covered earlier this week, doesn't care about the classification level of the documents. It's about whether they are of concern to national security. And they appear to be identifying perhaps 5 different documents that specifically fit under that. There are way more classified documents than that, but not necessarily more classified documents that are clearly of concern to national security. And so theoretically, he could be faced up to 50 years for that. I'm gonna run through a few more and then we'll talk. There's conspiracy charges, so obviously it's a crime to agree with another person to break a law. The penalty can be up to 5 years. We do not know exactly who that is going to be, although Trump did bleat earlier today that Walt Nauta is also being indicted. So we could assume that that's the person he's alleged to have conspired with, but we don't actually know that at this point. There's also obstruction. It's a crime to conceal records to obstruct an official effort. The penalty is up to 20 years per offense. I just wanted to point that out both so that you know that and so that Robert Mueller knows that, because he apparently forgot about that for a couple of years. You can't actually obstruct these sorts of investigations. And then you have false statements, 5 years per offense, mishandling official documents. That can result in 3 years per offense, as well as a ban on holding federal office. Although there's questions as to whether that would hold up in court if it were to actually be attempt to be enforced. And then contempt of court as well. They're basically saying that the grand jury subpoena that he received in 2022, that he only partially complied with and then ignored the rest of it, could result in him being found guilty of contempt of court. So there's a lot there. It looks like overall, Brett, they have decided that they're not going to engage with a lot of the stuff about classification levels. They're not gonna try to get into a big back and forth about whether he could psychically declassify things or whatever. Instead, they're just gonna focus on the things that are easier to prove that still, in theory, come with long potential stays in prison.
Right, and when I said earlier that this is, satirically stated by stating the opposite of my position, I said that essentially this isn't gonna affect anyone's perception of Donald Trump, but it will do something very important. And I think that's part of why it's happening. The Department of Justice is like, he is guilty of these things. I'm not gonna not prosecute him. But the one thing, I forgot it. I'm sorry, I forgot, John. I forgot what my point was, like a total idiot.
Well, how has it changed people's perception?
Oh, yeah, sorry, cut this part out. But okay, so the one thing it will do is remind normies that Trump is just too much to deal with. It'll remind them that, like, yes, Trump is always getting prosecuted for these things because any reasonable person understands, and if they can communicate it clearly, that this is key, that Trump just doesn't care about the rule of law. And whether I understand as a normal person taking my kids to school what the law is that he broke, we just know that every time this guy's in the spotlight, he does stuff. It's not that people are unfair to him. He just does stuff that's generally crappy and annoying, and he should be held responsible for it, because I'm held responsible for stuff like that if I were to break the types of laws that he is. If the court comes to me and says, "Can I have this evidence?" I have to give it. Appear and comply with a subpoena. I have to comply with that subpoena. Period.
Yeah. 100%. You would have to, we would have to. All we're asking for is for wealthy, powerful people to also have to comply with that. I'll also point out, by the way, in terms of these charges, I hadn't seen this before. If we could bring up this little chart, you're gonna see the percentage of respondents who say that the charges against Trump are serious or are disqualifying. And a lot of that is irrelevant. But 40% of Republicans agree with both of those statements. That's not nearly high enough, way lower than independents or Democrats, but still, some Republicans do consider this to be serious. Isn't that fascinating?
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.